I think I'm going to just go ahead with the score slides. Good afternoon to those of you who are just joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. So let me first tell you a little bit about SCORE. We are a national organization. Our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities, and we do this through mentoring and education. We aim to give all of you as small business owners the support you need to be successful. Small businesses drive our national economy and certainly our local economy through new business formation, job creation, wealth building, and they're certainly critical to development of vibrant communities. And that's well noticed if you have recognized the amount of small businesses that have sprung up in downtown Cleveland in the last couple of years. It's been an amazing revitalization. We have the largest network of free volunteer small business mentors in the nation. We are all across the country. There are about 10,000 of our mentors. So no matter what stage your business is, we can find a mentor for you. If we don't have somebody in the local office, we can tap into that network of 10,000 other mentors and find someone with the same background who can help you. So it's easy to request a mentor, and they will help you through all stages of your business. This is a snapshot of the impact of our national organization. In the 2023 year, we helped to start about 30,000 new businesses and created 152,000 jobs. Interestingly, 65% of our clients are women, and because of that, we're always trying to recruit new mentors, particularly women and minorities, because 46% of our clients are minorities, 13% are people with disabilities, and 9% are veterans. So we have all types of entrepreneurs. Again, we're delighted to see the number of women and minorities who are starting new businesses, and they are all helping our local communities. This is a snapshot of our website. You can go here and sign up for a mentor. You can actually look through the profiles of our local mentors and choose the one that you feel has the appropriate background to help you. You can look at our workshops. There's a list of upcoming workshops that are live and also recorded webinars. There are about 100 there on our website. Lots of other resources such as templates, articles, blogs, etc. So there are lots of good information on our website. If you have time, please go and take a look at it. Our services are free. Some portion of our budget is supported by the Small Business Administration, but the bulk of our budget is supported by local businesses who are interested in supporting local entrepreneurship. Here's a link, a QR code, and a link to our website. So take advantage of those. And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to David Holmes, who's the Regional Director of Education for Candid. And we're really excited about this because David is probably the authority on nonprofits, and we're thrilled that he's with us today. So I'm going to let him take over.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Anita, and welcome everybody. Again, my name is Dave Holmes. I work for an organization called Candid, and what I'm going to do here is share my slides so you can learn more about what I do. So we'll go back to the first slide. And here we are. This is a class called Are You Ready to Start a Nonprofit? I work with a lot of people in my role at Candid. This is me. That's my email address, by the way. If you decide you want to get in touch with me, you can always do that. You can reach out after this webinar. You can reach out anytime you like. I work here in Cleveland as a member of Candid, and Candid really started 5 years ago, but it used to be two other organizations working independently. One of them was Foundation Center, and Foundation Center has been around since the 50s, gathering information on grants and grant opportunities. And we put together a database called the Foundation Directory, which is still available, and it lists over 240,000 grant makers from all across the world. And we help people write grants. We teach people that process. We teach people how to do fundraising, how to put budgets together, that sort of stuff. And 5 years ago, we merged with another organization called GuideStar. GuideStar has been around for about 30 some years, collecting information on nonprofits. And GuideStar.org, if you ever go to that website, has a listing of all the active nonprofits in the United States, according to the IRS. And you may think, well, if I'm a nonprofit, I'm not on there. I don't know anything about it. You probably are on there and you just don't know. One thing we do with GuideStar is encourage people to go on there, look themselves up, and update their information, earns what's called seals of transparency. And those allow you to share information about who you are and make you available to the people that use the GuideStar database the most, which are givers, donation people, donor advised funds, foundations, community foundations. They use GuideStar to find out whether you're a legal nonprofit and whether they can give to you or not. So together, what we do is try to collect all the different data on givers and on nonprofits and understand it. We collect information on how funding is working and how things have changed because of COVID, because of George Floyd, because of other changes in the nonprofit system. We keep track of all that stuff. We share it with you, and we have lots and lots of free information. All of our classes, except for one, are free. All of our information on our website, candid.org, most of that is totally free and is easily downloadable. So you may want to take a look there. I'll probably show you a couple of things that are on our Candid Learning site, which is where we have most of our training materials. We also have partners across the country in the United States and Mexico, over 1,600 partners. And those include public libraries and other locations that offer free access to the things that you might have to pay for, like free access to Foundation Directory. If you want to search for grants, you don't want to subscribe to our database, you can go in to any of these locations and use it for free there. I'm in Greater Cleveland, and in the Cleveland area, for example, the Westlake Library is a partner, and the Cleveland Heights Library is a partner, and the Cleveland Public Library is a partner. And if you go across the state of Ohio, you will find many of our partners where we do trainings. We also have that free access and people trained to help you in using our materials. So hopefully you will take a look there and understand that. And by the way, yes, we will be sharing recording of these slides that I'm sharing. You're going to get a copy of them along with additional handouts and resources that come from this. All right, so what I'm going to talk about today is starting a nonprofit. I get a lot of people asking me, about starting a nonprofit, and I do share a lot of information. We don't sit down with you the way that SCORE does and mentor you through it, but we do go through some of the things that you have to know. So I'm going to talk about some of the steps. I'm talking about the legal steps, even though I'm not a lawyer and I'm not the ultimate authority on these steps. I do know about them, and I want to tell you what they are and where you can find more about those steps. But I'm also going to talk to you about some of the things that you don't think about that are not just the legal requirements, but are the other things you need to do if you're going to start a nonprofit, the other things you need to think about when you are starting a nonprofit. And I am going to talk about a free tool that we have on our website. I'll show it to you, and you can use it if you would like to, called the Nonprofit Startup Assessment Tool. And that's really designed to help you understand what's going on with you and what do you need to learn and what things maybe you hadn't thought of. It tries to bring all of that information to you. So we'll give you that. We'll also talk about some additional resources and field questions. I'm going to be pausing every so often to see if there are any questions that come in through the chat. But if you do have questions, please do post them there. And I'll pause and make sure that I get a chance to answer them. All right. So start with the first thing. What makes a nonprofit organization a nonprofit? And the people who administer nonprofits in the United States and supervise how they work is the Internal Revenue Service. So these are the rules that the IRS puts together. They are set up, a nonprofit organization is set up for one or more charitable purposes. It's not there to benefit individuals. It's not there to benefit and pay dividends or anything like that. It's set up to provide services for different charities, and that includes education and health and human service and arts and a lot of other, they do define all of those different terms. No benefit to private individuals or shareholders or private interests. You can make money. You can be paid if you're a member of a nonprofit. I'm paid. I'm a member of a nonprofit, but that doesn't mean that the benefit of the nonprofit and all the profits that come in, the earnings for a nonprofit, can go to giving dividends and giving extra money. It's really for giving back to the programming that's going on. And one of the other things that is true for a nonprofit 501c3, which is the public charity that we're talking about here, is that you won't attempt to influence legislation or participate in a political campaign substantially. And that word, by the way, that's why I'm not a lawyer, because I don't want to interpret the word substantially. But what it means is that that can't be the primary focus of the organization. You can advocate for an issue, but you can't advocate for a particular candidate. So I can say, I think that youth should receive after school information, and I can advocate for that in a political way, but I can't say vote for this person because he supports that. So that's part of the dividing lines between a nonprofit and a different kind of a 501c3 public charity and other types of nonprofits or for-profits. This is a one-page description of all the different things that you have to do to get the 501c3. And 501c3, by the way, is just the part of the tax code that talks about public charities. And so that's what I'm talking about here. I'm going to go through these steps relatively quickly, but I want to show you where you can find more information about this. So the first part of starting a nonprofit isn't just the fact that you want to start a nonprofit. You have to have a board of directors. It is not run by you. It is run by a board of directors. And that is necessary if you're going to establish an official nonprofit. There has to be at least 3 people in the state of Ohio on your board of directors, and 2 of them can't be you. You can't be the executive director and like the majority of the board. So you have to have a board of directors and put together bylaws and board policies, which are basically the rules of how the nonprofit works. Those things are necessary if you want to incorporate in the state of Ohio as a nonprofit organization. The steps are that in order to become a national nonprofit, and that's the 501c3, a federal nonprofit, you have to first incorporate in the state. And the Secretary of State's office publishes a book on how to become a nonprofit organization in the state of Ohio. And it costs, I think, and we were just talking about this, it costs $99 to incorporate in the state of Ohio. You get an employer identification number from the IRS once you are able to incorporate in this state. And then you file for federal tax exemption. And there's a form called the Form 1023, and it's available in different lengths and different sizes, depending on how many assets your organization is going to have and how big it's going to be. But that costs money as well. You file it with the IRS, and it takes a while, sometimes as much as 18 months, to go through the different processes of becoming a official legal nonprofit organization. Now, I could go through each of those different steps, but what I want to do is stop here and share a website that I think you should look at. And you may find this strange, and I'm going to recommend the IRS's website, because the IRS's website, I think, is pretty famous for being a little bit difficult to navigate. It is challenging sometimes if you go to irs.gov, which is the IRS website, and try to find what you're looking for. It can be a little bit dizzying. But I'm going to show you a little shortcut to find out information about starting a nonprofit in particular. So here is irs.gov. This is the main page. Up here in the top right is a little link that says charities and nonprofits. And I'm going to go to that link. And it gives you, it's still a little confusing because it has a lot of different choices. It gives you the latest news and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm looking for is this, the life cycle of an exempt organization. It's there on the left-hand column. And if I choose that, it's going to take me through how to start a nonprofit, creating a nonprofit under state law, how to apply for exemption, and that's the IRS forms that you need to do, and then also what you need to file afterwards. Because if you start a nonprofit, there are annual reporting requirements to the IRS, and in some cases to places where you're fundraising and other ongoing compliance elements. So you want to know about all of these different things. This is a one-step place to find all of that. Even so, on this page, it's the life cycle and exempt organization, but where I want to show you is the public charities part, is down a little bit further here. This takes you through all the different elements. And remember, I was talking about creating bylaws and creating your organizational documents. It has samples there for you to download. It has information on bylaws and talks about the different state law requirements. It talks about how to get an EIN and has an application form there. It talks about charitable solicitation, which is something you have to register for in different states. And some states require different kinds of reporting. And then finally, it goes into the step-by-step of applying to the IRS. The reason I love this section is that it lines it out pretty clearly with all the different things you need to link to, and it gives you those publication numbers. The numbers don't really seem to have any relation to what they're about. So publication 4220 is the directions for applying for 501c3. Publication 557 is about tax exempt status. And there's other numbers in here that they don't follow, they don't really come in any order, so it can be very confusing. This will walk you through it. So I really recommend the irs.gov's life cycle of a public charity. And I'm going to take you directly to that by putting that link in the chat here. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I don't have permission to post to the public here, to everybody. So perhaps, Anita, you can copy that and paste it to everybody. Thank you. This is one place where you can find this information. I am also going to talk about what Candid has on its website. And one thing that Candid does have on its website, and this is at our website, learning.candid.org, which is our learning section, are resources for nonprofit startup. And I'm going to click on that. This is on learning.candid.org, and then I'm going to resources. And I'm going to click on nonprofit startup resources because there's two things on here. I'll show one of them a little bit later. But at the bottom of that page, the resources, nonprofit startup resources page, it has information for nonprofits starting in any state. And that includes Ohio. So if you go to Ohio, it has technical assistance providers and legal resources and nonprofit association information and state agencies that will help. And then startup guides, a nice overview of how to start up a nonprofit in the United States, in every state, including Ohio. So this is all incredibly important stuff. And I'm going to go back to sharing the slides now. And it is very vital for you as you're starting a nonprofit to know all these elements and to go through and become a legal nonprofit. And SCORE advisors and SCORE mentors really help with following the process and helping you with that. Another person that is also often very helpful is working with a lawyer who can take you through and help you answer some of the questions, particularly when you file a Form 1023. That can be very challenging, how you want to state what you're doing. And a nonprofit lawyer, which I recommend working with a pro bono, a free nonprofit lawyer if you can. And I recommend contacting your local bar association. I do always send people to the Cleveland Bar Association. And if you're in a different city, another bar association for your region, it might be able to help you connect to pro bono assistance for going through the process. But once you get that legal status or get in the path for getting the legal status, there are still many things you have to consider when you are starting a nonprofit. And I want to go through a few of these because I think it's important to know that it isn't just you create a legal nonprofit and then you just wait for the money to roll in. That's not how it works. There are things that funders, particularly grant makers, government funders, people that you can then be eligible, once you start a nonprofit, you're eligible for grants and tax deductible donations. But there are things that are expected of you from those funders that you need to be aware of. And so I'm going to go through a number of them here and make sure that you're clear on them. These are the different steps that you need to think about as you go through getting a nonprofit off the ground. And these are all things that I want to just address a little bit, and not in full detail, but just enough so that you know what's involved in it. It is important to know that nonprofits start and are run based on a mission. And this is part of the organizing documents of a nonprofit. The mission is what you're often asked about whenever somebody says, what do you do? What's your nonprofit do? You often find yourself stating the mission. The mission statement is essentially the statement of nonprofit purpose, what it does on a day-to-day basis. That's the easiest way to think about it. If somebody asked you, what do you do? You would use your mission to describe the kind of things you do. We provide after school education to children in the greater Cleveland area. We provide food service to North Ridgeville, Ohio, by providing after school lunches and a food bank and X. You would describe the things that you do. Behind the mission, and that mission sometimes takes a long time for a nonprofit to put together and for the people that are starting the nonprofit to come up with. But behind that mission is usually a vision. And a vision would be not what you do day to day, but what would the world look like if you were successful in completing your mission, if you were able to do it? A world where no child goes hungry, a world where every adult, every senior has enough food and enough money for retirement. The vision isn't something that is a practical thing, but it puts voice to the essential thing behind both the mission and vision, and that's your values. The values of what you do, like we believe that every child should learn to read by age 8. We believe every adult should have access to health care. These are values that really drive the mission and vision of a nonprofit. And implied in the mission and vision are those values, the things that you hold in common, the things that you want your board members to think, the things that you want everybody who works for your organization to consider. There are also the things, the values, are the things that funders connect to. Because I teach another class on finding grants, and I talk about the different types of grant makers, for example, private foundations and corporations and charities that give money away. They all build their giving around a set of values, things that they care most about. And when you look for funding, you're not just looking for, oh, well, what's the biggest foundation around here? Well, the Gates Foundation is the biggest foundation I know about. Let's ask them for money. Because every foundation, every one of these givers has a priority area, a region that they like to fund in, and priority values, subjects that they like to support, people that they like to support. So you're looking, by creating a clear nonprofit, you're looking to set yourself up to connect with funders that are out there, individuals and foundations and government sources and other sources of funding that will give you money because of the values that you are upholding through your mission and through your vision. It's good practice, and I'm not going to ask you to do it for this webinar because we just have an hour here. But it's good practice if you are just in the early stages of starting your nonprofit to think, what are these three things? What are the mission of your organization? What is your vision? And what do you value? Because you want to assemble a team that is going to embody this. And you have to have a clear idea of what it is. And maybe the group of people that you're working with to start your nonprofit, you've never really articulated it before. It is important to try and make sure you get the word out about it and talk about what is necessary. So once you have an idea for a nonprofit, a clear mission, a clear vision of what you want to do, the values that you stand for, it's important to also know, what world am I working in? Meaning, what is my environment like? If I'm starting a nonprofit in Cincinnati, who else is doing similar things in Cincinnati? Is anybody doing something similar in Cincinnati, for example? The questions you want to ask yourself is anybody else doing the exact work that we're doing? Because if you're going to start a nonprofit that duplicates the services of somebody else, a funder who knows that other organization is going to come to you and say, well, why should we support you when we already support them? And it may be something where you don't know all of what's going on in your region. Certainly when I moved here, I didn't know all the different nonprofits and all the different things that they did. So I want to know, first of all, who else is doing work like mine and what makes us different from them. That's what an environmental scan really tells you is, where do you fit? What is your niche in this particular group? Maybe there's a successful business model out there that you're following and you want to say, okay, well, they do this in Cincinnati, they do this in Columbus. I want to do this in Cleveland. So you're following a business model and not innovating, but duplicating in a way that isn't completely duplicative in the region you're in. Or you have something that's really new that you know doesn't exist in your city and doesn't happen, and it needs to happen. But you need to know that ahead of time because I'll rest assured, if you go to a big foundation and ask them for money, they are going to know what's already going on in your town. And if you say, well, I'm a brand new nonprofit, they're going to say, well, do you know what this organization does? How are you different from them? And if you don't know that, that may jeopardize your continued existence because people tend to gravitate toward things that have already been established unless they see a reason not to, unless they see a reason why what you do is necessary. So an environmental scan is part of putting together the nonprofit, getting it started, understanding who else is out there. Also part of the very early stages of this is assembling a team. I have had people that have come to me and said, well, I just need to get a few grants so I can hire a bunch of people to do this work. And I say, well, that isn't often how nonprofits start. Nonprofits start because, first of all, they have to have a board of directors. The law for public charities in the United States requires the board of directors as the directing element of any nonprofit. You have a president, maybe an executive director of that nonprofit, but that person should not be the dictator of what happens. And the reason why these organizations are called public charities is because they are run by representations from the public. And oftentimes these people are people that you already know. It's tempting to want it to be everybody in your family who's on your side or all of your friends who are on your side. But when you begin a nonprofit, you're really trying to assemble a board that is capable of doing the work that you're going to do, because oftentimes you don't have a lot of money when you first start. And even fundraising is difficult when you're a new organization. And you may find yourself relying on those people to, number one, donate to the organization. Number two, donate their time to the organization in a particular way, in that they often will oversee it and make sure and keep it going in the early stages. Ideally, you want to go from board members to building a staff and hiring people, but the board is who puts together the organizational documents for the nonprofit, how you're going to hire, who you're going to hire, that kind of stuff is the bylaws and how you run your organization. That's coming out of the board. We're not the national expert on boards at Candid, but there is a national expert on boards for nonprofits, and it's called Board Source. So I encourage you to take a look at Board Source if you are putting your board together, to find some of the best resources, lots and lots of free resources, but also publications you might want to get that will tell you what you need to do when you create a board and some of the things that a board will do for you. As you go on, you might find yourself wanting to have staff members, but of course you have to be able to pay them. So you have to have hiring practices. You have to eventually build. And so oftentimes nonprofits, when they start, if they have any paid staff members, it's just one person. It's just the executive director. And then they begin to build that. But it is a process. Oftentimes you're also looking to involve as many people as possible, and not everybody is a good board member. We talk about board development in our board development class and our board fundraising class. And what often comes out is that people who you want on your board, who may be able to donate a lot or give a lot of time or give a lot of wisdom to you, don't have enough time to be on your board. So how else can you have them involved? It's important to have a pathway for people who care about you, who are interested in what you do, to be connected to you, maybe as volunteers, maybe as a separate advisory board that gives you feedback, but isn't running the operations of the organization. So this is part of structuring your early organization, is understanding how is it going to work? And do you have board members already? Who do you need? What skills don't you have on your board? Like the ability to understand fundraising and the ability to understand finance that maybe you want to try and use to build. That's probably something that never goes away for any nonprofit. Building a board of directors that really embodies what the organization needs so that they can get work done, even if the staff isn't there to do it. All of this stuff is part of the initial structure of the organization. But when you start reaching out and you start telling your story to people, maybe you've gone through the legal elements and you've got a 501c3 and you're ready to go and ready to do things, it's important to think, how am I going to tell my story of what my programs are going to do? One of a difficult thing, I think, that new nonprofits have trouble with is that when you start a nonprofit, you're thinking about your need. We need to hire people. We need to get a building. We need to get a location. The thing is, when you go to funders and you go to individual donors or foundations or any other sources of money, they're not thinking about your need as much as they're thinking about the need in the community that you're responding to. This goes back to the values. We value making sure that children can read and that no one goes hungry and that everybody has access to healthcare. That need in the community is what you are responding to by having your nonprofit. So you need to be able to articulate that need. And doesn't mean saying, well, we need about $400,000 to hire a bunch of staff people. That's not what I mean by need. I mean, the need in the community is evident by the fact that 30% of the people that we serve don't finish high school. The 30% of the people are not able to get a job and keep a job. 30% of the people that we work with are immigrants that don't have connection to basic human assistance. You need to be able to describe the population, the people that you work with, and not just describing it based on deficits. Oh, all those people need this. That's not what we're talking about. It's not pointing at somebody and say, oh, these are all like under-resourced people, or these are all at-risk youth. At-risk youth is a nice statistic description, but nobody walks around with a label saying at risk on their forehead. So who are these people really? Where do they come from? What are they like? What do they want to achieve? That is the need that you are helping them get to. And it could be that they need to have regular food or regular assistance or help with reading or the ability to get a job and break out of poverty. Tell me what that need is, because that's the basis of any other things that you talk about in your nonprofit. Your programs are built around how do you address the need. I talk about this programming because as you start to establish your nonprofit, more and more people are going to ask you, well, what do you do? And they don't just ask you like, well, we do these things and whenever we can help as many people as we can. They want specifics. And so when you do program design, and by the way, on that Candid Learning site, learning.candid.org, we have books and resources and trainings on all of the things that I am talking to you about. And I can't get into a lot of detail today, but if you wanted to learn about program design, for example, we have free ebooks, and many of them are about designing programs and creating clear nonprofit programs. So I encourage you, if you're looking for resources, then that's a place to find them. Candid Learning is the learning.candid.org section of our site. When you're talking about your programs and services, it's important to know what are your goals? What are your broad senses of what you're aiming for? And what specific things are you aiming to do? How many people are you planning to serve? What are you offering them? And how are they going to change? Not just that they're going to get 12 classes and they come to the 12 classes and you can say, well, we served 200 people in 12 classes. And that sounds great. But it doesn't tell me, how did they change? What did the classes do for them? What did they learn? What can they now do? If you provided 100,000 hot meals, that's fantastic. What now is the result of that? Are the people in the community more nutritionally satisfied? Are they able to function better? Are they able to pay more attention in school? Tell me about not just what your plan is, but the specific things that you're going to measure to show that you're successful at doing what you're going to do. That's what a program is. And the program addressing the need is really the root of any fundraising that you do. Anyone that wants to donate to you is going to ask, oh, who are you helping and what are you doing for them? And how do you know that? All of those three things are so important when you're making sure that your nonprofit can function. The nonprofit function comes with bringing in the money to pay for all the different things you want to do. The board might volunteer and you might spend a lot of your own money and get a lot of things done early on. But what you're trying to do is build a self-sustaining organization. So you have to come up with ideas about what the budget is going to be. Your proposed budget is the first budget that you're going to do, where you don't know exactly what you're liable to have happen, and you don't necessarily know how much everything costs, but you have an idea. And when you put that budget together, part of that is thinking about not just what you're going to spend the money on and what things are going to cost, but also where are you planning to get the money to cover that? I tell people a lot of bad news early on when I do this, and this is not meant to overload you with bad news, but people that are thinking that they're going to start a nonprofit and the first thing they're going to do is get a grant that covers all the expenses, that's not how it works. Private foundations do not give you all of the money that you need. And I mean, they're legally not able to give you past a certain amount of your budget. They can't be the only source of funding for you. You have to be publicly supported. That's another thing that makes you a public charity. So you have to think about all the different places you could get your funding. And that is including individuals, that's including like your board of directors, but also people that are closely connected to you, maybe corporations, maybe foundations, but again, it's not usually the first source. Maybe you're going to do fundraising events or other ways, crowdfunding, gathering together and raising money by sharing information about what you're doing to get individuals to sign on and help you. Maybe you use social media to fundraise. Maybe you're going to try and connect to a government source of funding. Again, this is not a first day, I'm going to do that. It does happen over time once you get established. We have another class at Candid called Intro to Fundraising Planning, which is available for free, by the way, on the Candid Learning site, where it can take you through all the different potential options. Introduction to Fundraising Planning, again, is a free class. It's available as a recorded webinar. It's also offered live regularly through the Candid Learning site. All of that planning and all of that planning for how your budget is going to work, even before you get into doing fundraising, you have to have a way of keeping track of all the money too. And you have to have procedures and infrastructure in place if you start to get grants. You don't just take a grant and say, oh, big grant, I can spend it however I want. There has to be some tracking, because most foundations, if they give you a grant, expect you to report back on exactly how that money was spent, exactly how. So it is not about putting it all in a pile and using it for whatever you want. It's about, sometimes it comes with restrictions. Government funding very often comes with restrictions. Other sources like individual gifts, donations, might be a little bit easier to use for general support. But oftentimes foundations in particular are about supporting programs rather than supporting everything. How are you going to make sure you can report back to them and say that the money was spent the way that you said? Because you want to stay connected to them. We have a whole other set of classes, by the way, on different types of fundraising, including proposal writing and grant writing. SCORE also runs a lot of wonderful workshops related to this. So hopefully you will be able to connect up with them. But I want to move on to talking about some of the other things you absolutely have to think about. You have to think about spreading the word about what you do. And it isn't just like, if you build it, people will show up at your door. It is, I need to be able to market what we do so that the people that I really want to help know about it and know they can get help from me. So part of it is marketing. And if you think about marketing as something where you put a lot of ads in the paper or you distribute leaflets or something like that, that's only part of marketing. When you're thinking about marketing, you're thinking of getting the word out to people that already might be connected to the community that you serve. So how do you do that? How do you keep them informed about what's going on, and how do you reach them? It might be through partnering. Partnering is extremely important to funders. They like to see when you partner with different places. It's also extremely important for organizations to continue, because you can't do absolutely everything yourself. What if you want to get the word out to a community that gets a lot of their news from, a local other organization? They participate in this organization. Maybe it's an activity center or a recreation center, and you have something that the people at that recreation center might need. How can you partner with the recreation center to get the word out? How can you partner with churches? How can you partner with hospitals in order to spread the word about what you're going to do, because you know it benefits the people that they already meet with? That's another part of marketing, is collaboration and partnerships. Doesn't mean you give them your work to do. It means that you take advantage of the fact that they are already connected to people that you want to talk to, that you want to be helped by you, or to give money to you or volunteer with you. That's part of marketing. There are lots of other considerations when starting a nonprofit, and this is really meant to just give you an overview of all the things that you need to think about. And then I'm going to show you a tool that might help you get a better sense of where you are. But some other considerations are space. I can't tell you the number of people who have come to me and said, well, all I need is a big grant to buy a building. And I have to say that is highly unlikely. It's highly unlikely that you're going to get a large amount of money from a foundation or any source to buy a big building. Renovating a building is also something that is often asked for, and that's difficult. It's possible. Everything is possible, but it is extremely difficult for a new organization. Oftentimes when a new organization starts, you have to look around and think, what space can I use? What space might I already have that I can use? What space that I might be able to fix up at low cost to use? Or what space can I share? Can I partner with a place and use their unused space or their basement to do my work? Is there equipment that you need? Is that something else that you might be able to share with other people in the same business? Or do you have to buy this or get it donated before you start going? Certain nonprofits have to really worry about insurance. If you're working with small children or you're working and need to do a lot of transportation as part of what you do, you need insurance, special types of insurance. The Ohio Association of Nonprofit Organizations, or OWANO, often has buying plans for different insurance, and you can find out more about that by contacting them. But you may need to get insurance before you can really carry out your work safely. Do you need any expertise in human resources? If you're starting to hire people, you need a policy manual. You need some sort of personnel guide because you don't want to start things out and you do it all kind of like iffy and non-structured. And then you find out people get angry or people sue you or something happens that you can't control. So you need some sort of control of that. And you need to know about that reporting. Back when I was talking about the IRS, I was talking about annual reporting. A 990 is something that is required to be filed with the IRS every year by a nonprofit in order for that nonprofit to stay in existence. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to file a really long form. Sometimes it's a very short form that you have to file, but you have to file it. And if you don't file it or you don't pay attention to the regular reports that you need to file, you can be stricken from the rolls of nonprofits and have to start over. So you definitely want to pay attention to that reporting. That includes registering as a fundraiser in different states. If you're going to fundraise in a different state, oftentimes you have to register with that state as a fundraiser. Maybe there's other annual reporting. Certainly, if you get grants, you have to report back on them too. So I told you a lot of things that might make you less eager to be a nonprofit if you haven't already gone that route. There are all alternatives to starting a nonprofit organization, and we recommend all of these as ways to get comfortable with how nonprofits work too. So you can volunteer with a nonprofit or find employment with a local organization, serve on a nonprofit board. This is an alternative to starting your own nonprofit. You may find satisfaction and the ability to do what you want to do through those ways. The last one on this list, fiscal sponsorship, means that you don't start a nonprofit, you don't go through the legal status of incorporating, but you partner with another organization for a particular nonprofit project. And that organization sponsors you fiscally. That means they have the 501c3 that you need and they provide financial information. And in return, you're doing the work as a partner of theirs. That's fiscal sponsorship. And it's not a one-step thing. Fiscal sponsorship is an agreement, and it should be a legal agreement that's drawn up between what you are doing as an independent or small group of people and the nonprofit that is in existence. And yes, we do have on Candid Learning, the learning.candid.org site, information on fiscal sponsorship as well. What are the advantages of going through the whole process and starting the nonprofit? Well, you are a tax-exempt organization, so if somebody donates to you, particularly foundations, they're able to donate to you. They're legally not able to give to organizations that are doing things for profit. So you're able to get grants. You're able to get donations, and people who give a lot of money can take tax deductions for them. And you have a formal structure. When you have a board of directors, that is sometimes what an executive director doesn't want, but it limits the liability of your organization. So the structure is based on a nonprofit and a board, and the board is responsible for keeping the organization going. And if the nonprofit runs out of money and goes bankrupt, doesn't mean that each person on the board goes bankrupt. It means that it's just the organization itself that runs into trouble. There's a structure that is legally set up to protect the people that are part of it. Disadvantages, it costs money to get started as a nonprofit. Nobody is going to give you a grant to register with the IRS. Those grants don't exist. There is paperwork. lots of paperwork to sign up, to register, to keep compliant with the government. There's shared control. The board is in charge. The board can fire you as an executive director if, remember I said that the board has 3 people. If 2 of those people decide you're not the best executive director, they can side against you and move you out of the organization. Doesn't happen very often, but it's possible. And remember those 990 forms that I mentioned there that you file with the IRS? These are all public documents. So if you publish, you send your 990 to the IRS, anyone can look at that and they can see exactly how much money you paid everybody, exactly how much money you spent on your programs. And they do. Oftentimes in the holiday season, there's always somebody who's looking at 990 reports and saying, did you know that for every dollar you give to this organization, they use 50 cents of it to fundraise? And get that information because it's public. So what do? Well, this is a tool that I want to show you, and it's again at learning.candid.org. I'm going to take you there right now, show you what it looks like. This is a tool called the Nonprofit Startup Assessment Tool, and it is here on Candid Learning. So this is the main Candid Learning site. It's in the resources, and it's in the Nonprofit Startup Resources. The Nonprofit Startup Assessment Tool is, and I've filled this out before. I'm just going to log in. It has 68 questions, and it asks you questions about all these different elements about getting started as a nonprofit. By the way, this is a free thing. You just need to register on the site so you can download the results. It has information about getting started. It has information about what your inspiration is, your financial capital, human capital, social capital, knowledge of program development, of boards, and market analysis. All of these different elements of running a nonprofit it asks you about. And then it takes a look and says, where are you in being ready? And it ranks you on different elements. If you answer most of the questions correct, it gives you a green. If it answers some of the questions wrong, it might give you a yellow. And if you get a red, that means you need to learn specific things. And it tells you, based on your answer, what is some insight and what is a good tool that you can use to help develop more the kind of things you need to know. This is free. You can download this information. You can take it several times and you can learn from it. It points to a lot of the resources that are listed here. It points to resources outside of Candid as well, of course. But it also points to resources listed here in our ebooks. I mentioned you can borrow ebooks from Candid for free. Ebooks and audiobooks are freely available through Candid about fundraising, about grants, about managing your nonprofits, putting together your programs, AI for Good. This is one of the newest ones we have. All of these are available for you to check out from Candid. Other things that are available here, in addition to the ebooks, are what's called our knowledge base. And the knowledge base isn't self-explanatory, but it's essentially answers to all the questions we get asked. So if you're interested in a fiscal sponsorship and you want to know what those are, you can search the term fiscal sponsorship and find these resources. What is a fiscal sponsorship? How do I find a fiscal sponsor? Where can I find examples of policies, procedures, and guidelines for fiscal sponsorships? It takes you to this information. It has some answers to your questions. They're in English and Spanish, by the way. And it tells you where you can find more information. And the staff picks are the ones we think of the best websites. It's really scary sometimes to just start Googling, I want to start a nonprofit, and see all the people that want to sell you stuff. This is all free resources, and we've tried to vet it so that it gives you the best stuff that you need. It's all available at learning.candid.org in the resources section. All right, I am going to share just the last few slides. I'm approaching time here, and I want to make sure we get any questions answered that you might have. So I showed you the nonprofit startup assessment. That tool is really great. I do recommend, if you're very new to the organization and new to fundraising for your organization, to take our Intro to Fundraising Planning class, which is listed here. And we do love your feedback. you may get a feedback form from SCORE. I'm not sure about that, but we'd love to get your feedback too. Do you have your own evaluation form as well?
Yes, actually, the day after the session, we send out a survey.
Okay, great.
So we hope that people will respond to it because it helps us improve what we're doing. And we also pass it on to the presenter if there are any comments that need to be addressed. So good thing.
Well, I am glad to help you, and hope this was very helpful for everybody today, and that if it didn't answer your questions, it got them started. And I'll go back to my email address, or I'll just tell you what it is. It's david.holmes, Holmes, david.holmes @candid.org. If you have any other questions or want to learn more about fundraising, if you're in the greater Cleveland area, I do appointments. If you are in different parts of the state, you know that we have different locations that can help you out. But so glad to have you all here today.
Okay, well, they will get the slides and the link to the recording, so that does have your email address if they want to get in touch with you. I don't see any questions, which I think means that the presentation was very clear and easy to understand. So I hope that those of you who came today will use the resources that Candid offers. I think that assessment is a wonderful tool, and all the other tools that are available, you should take advantage of them. And of course, if you want mentoring, come to SCORE and we'll work with you. So thank you very much, David, for doing the presentation. And thank you all for spending an hour with us. And I hope the rest of your day is rewarding. So we'll see you again.